Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast. Many of us struggle with sales, whether it's from confidence, comfort, and just not wanting to be salesy. We want to help our customers. We know we can, but we complicate the process. This podcast is designed to help professionals like you improve at sales through process, practice, frameworks, and thinking differently about what you already know. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry, and with us is the star of the show, the founder of Catalyst Sale, Mike Simmons. Hello, Mike.
I feel like I should have walk-up music.
Oh, you should. Well, we do have theme music for the show.
Oh, we do. Yeah, so there you go. There's the walk-up music. Wow. I felt like I was getting ready to get in a boxing ring. Like you're announcing in the middle of the ring. Way to go, Jody. I think we do this every time now. I feel good.
Well, good. That's exactly what we want as we start an episode. I need to tell you what I'm up to today, Mike, because it's relevant, and I think we can make a whole episode of it. Before I get there, though, what is this show brought to us by?
This show is brought to us by the Catalyst Sale Game Plan. So it's a Catalyst Sale course focused on goal setting and execution through clarity and focus. It's a 15-day program. And if you have ever struggled with executing on your goals, this course will help you.
And where do we find it?
CatalystSale.com/game plan.
Game plan. There we go. Okay, Mike. If you could see the pants I'm wearing right now, you would see the knees are muddy, just covered in mud. Like beyond, I don't think this is ever going to wash out because I've been outside all day. I came inside just for you, Mike. I've been outside building a fence.
So what goes into building a fence?
Well, the first part is putting up the posts and then the rails and then the boards.
So did you put up the post and then the rails and then the boards, or like, did you do all of this, or did you?
Well, here's the thing. Despite being a park ranger, I know park rangers are viewed as they can do anything. And, you know, I think what that comes from when you go to a park, you see someone in uniform doing everything, but that's not, some people have their own specialties. So that's a whole other conversation. I was a law enforcement ranger. I am not a handyman. You do not want me swinging a hammer, but that's what I've been doing all day, swinging a hammer, putting up boards. I did not do the posts. I did not do the rails because I said, I've got a problem. I have a 1-year-old lab. It does not work to have a 1-year-old lab and not have a fence. So I needed a fence, but it is beyond my ability to build a fence. So I said, okay, if there's 3 parts to building a fence, is there any part I can do? Posts? Absolutely not. Rails? No, not if I want them straight, but maybe I can do boards. So I hired someone that built out the frame, the posts and the rails for me, and then consulted with me on what I needed to do for the boards. And I started this morning, I've been doing that part myself. And it just got me thinking, there's so much relevant in what I'm doing with my fence to so many of the problems that we have. Perhaps I shouldn't be doing any of this myself, but I am. And I could have tried to do it all myself and messed it up and taken a lot of time and then probably had to have someone come and fix it. Or I could have gone completely the other direction, which perhaps I should have, to have someone build the entire fence. But I said, okay, I don't need to know how to do the posts and the rails, but I need to know who can do it. And I knew who could do it. And I called him and he came and did it. And that's really important to understand. I guess if you can break a problem down into pieces, you can figure out what can I do and who can do the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is one of the most common mistakes we make when it comes to problem solving is we look at it and we're first like, okay, well, I just got to figure this whole thing out on my own rather than breaking it down into the smaller parts. And ultimately deconstructing the problem into smaller parts, getting it down to the bare minimum, and then saying, of these things, what can I do? How can I do it? And the conversation that I'll have with folks around this is really a buy versus build capability. So you could have built the entire thing on your own. You could have made that decision, just build the entire thing on your own. And you might have woken up around the middle of January or heck, maybe even the middle of March and have a half-built fence and a dog that is now, 18 months or 15 months old, depending on when Wolfie was actually born. But you wouldn't have gotten very far, and you would have probably had a high level of frustration inside your household. And a lot of us have these half-baked or half-built projects laying around. I've got something I need to put up in one of the rooms in the house. It's still sitting in that room. It has not yet been put up. The drill is in the room, but the thing itself hasn't been put up. So you go through this process of, okay, I can build the whole thing. And there's some benefit to that. You build it the way that you want to. You can enjoy the time, energy, and resource that you're putting into it. That is not something that I enjoy. I enjoy building things technically. I enjoy creating things. I don't get a lot of value out of hammering stuff or cutting stuff or some of those other manual things that you can do. Now, I get a lot of enjoyment out of playing golf. I get a lot of enjoyment out of going for a walk. If I can outsource some of the things that might take away the time or reduce the amount of time that I can be on the golf course, or reduce the amount of time that I can be at the gym, or reduce the amount of time I can spend doing whatever, then I'm really excited about buying that capability. And that's really what you've just described. You've bought 2/3 of the capability. You bought the posts and you bought the framing. And now the posts are going to be in properly, which are really important. And the frame is going to be up properly, which is also really important because now you're going to have straight lines. Now, the only thing you really have to execute on is putting those boards up. And so that's what you're doing. It's kind of cool. You did a combination of both buy versus build, or buy and build at the same time. And you could have gone on either side. You could have either bought everything, you could have built everything, or you could do something in the middle. And I think it's pretty cool. And it's problem solving. It's deconstructing a problem and then going in and solving for the lowest common denominator.
Well, I'm going to turn this back to problem solving soon, but here's personally why I decided to do it. I realize my time is probably better spent inside creating content and finishing that darn book and all the other things I need to do. But of all the years to need a fence, I said, I need something. I need to be outside doing something. And it's cold and windy and raining a little bit here. I don't care. I just wanted to have a project to do. Any other year, I probably would have outsourced the entire fence. But this year I wanted to do something myself. So that's what I did. But here's what happened is I didn't break it down into enough steps, because that's part of solving a problem and being able to realize what you can do and what someone else should do is breaking it down into enough steps. And I ended up buying nails that were just slightly too long and they're poking through the rail on the other end. And that's because I didn't know I just looked for fencing nails. I didn't know. And I should have broke that down into a problem. My problem was get fencing nails. That's what I thought the step was. But it was bigger than that. It was get the right length of fencing nails. And part of that comes from never doing this before. So along the way, it does help in breaking it down to consult with someone that's done this before.
Yeah, absolutely. And you aren't going to know, where your blind spots are until something or someone helps reveal those things. Hey, what do I need? I need a couple of nails. Well, what length nails? Well, I just need fencing nails. Well, what kind of fence are you putting up? Putting up a wooden fence. It's going to have some boards on it. Now, the question on the other end could be, is it a two-sided fence? Are you putting boards on both sides of the fence? Are those boards going to alternate on either side of the fence? Are you going to have them line up with each other on either side of the fence? Depending on the type of fence you're going to put on, those nails there might be a benefit of having the nail be a little bit too long because it stabilizes the board on the other side as you're putting it through. But I've never built a fence. I now know more about fence building than I ever thought I would care to know about fence building. We don't actually have fences out here in Arizona. We've got some wrought iron fences, but for the most part, we use cinder block and stucco to secure the perimeter.
Well, here in the Northwest, we like our cedar fences. And so here's another thing, Mike, that goes into it. I could have used, and in the big scheme, episode is not about building a fence, but I could have, as you break it down and you realize that you have options along the way, I could have used screws and screwed all the boards in, which is easy to fix if you make a mistake. You just screw the board back out. Or I could use nails, which is a lot cheaper, but there's no real margin for error. Not when you're as bad as me at it. So that's just the thing. And to understand how to break down a problem, if you break it down in enough steps, all of a sudden, something that seems impossible, me building a fence, I can tell you impossible. But if I break it down in enough steps and I say, okay, this doesn't make sense for me to do, this I can't do, I can go down every step and say, okay, this is how I will get this done. This is who will get this done. So that I think that's the important piece in all of this, is to understand if you can break a problem down enough, then you can get it done. I don't think you can break a problem down into too many steps.
The challenge that you run into is going through and saying time. It's time, risk, impact. So if you have all the time in the world and you don't need the fence to be done until 10 years from now, yep, you can break that down further and further and further, and even get to the point of saying, okay, here is how I'm going to, with a high level of precision, make sure each of the nails are delivered in the same part of the board. I'm going to take these boards, I'm going to measure out individual on each board with a pencil. I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to cross that line so I put the nail in the same place. But the reality is nobody cares. Like, nobody really cares exactly where the nail is on the board. Now, you'll notice it. Like, for me, I have an eye for detail, which is the primary reason why I don't build things around our house. I'd rather get a professional to come in and do it and make sure all the lines are right. Because if I do it, don't have the patience to make sure that all of the lines are perfect. And I know that long-term, I'll be more frustrated when I start to see gaps that happen or things that don't align properly. So you could break this down and break it down for an eternity. But at that point, you'd probably be on Wolfie number 2. And then then you may or may not have benefited from actually having the fence. And Wolfie number 1 didn't benefit from the fence. So you've got some time-bound things that you're working through. Establish that time, understand what your risk is, and then make a decision as quickly as possible with all of the data that you've got so that you can actually start moving things forward. Yeah, you could just dwell in analysis paralysis. And a lot of this aligns with what's in the goal setting program. I mean, we talk about the goal. The goal is ultimately a problem that you want to execute on. The goal could be, I want to double the revenue that I'm generating inside my business. It could be, I want to increase the number of customers that I've got inside my business. It could be, I want to have enough money to support a family vacation in a certain period of time. The problem is the money, the people, the revenue, the customers, all of those things. And if you work backwards, and I like to work backwards in groups of 3, similar to what you talked about. When you build a fence, you've got posts, you've got framing, and then you have boards. Well, then there's also the material purchase and all those other things. And you start to figure out which of those materials you have to purchase on your own. But if I can break that problem into 3 components, then I can say, of those 3 things, do I need to break those down further? Can I break those into 3 components? Then can I break those into 3 components? So you just get down to the smallest part, deconstruct down to the smallest part based on the amount of risk that you're taking on, the amount of time that you have to work through it. So urgency and the impact that it's going to have on your business or on your house. Now, a fence, the screws would be really cool because it'll look good. It'll look professional. They'll be sunken in. It'll be awesome. The nails will save you some money. But you've also got this challenge of, hey, if I buy the nails that are a little bit too long, what kind of risk does that create? So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And this approach to problem solving, execution relative to goals, building whatever it is that you're going to build, whether it's a fence or a business or a nest egg or a vacation fund, it's all the same basic concepts. Deconstruct down to the minimum point, get yourself to a point where you need to make a decision. And then don't forget the most important piece, start doing work, start taking action, because that fence is not going to build itself unless Rebecca makes a phone call and says, hey, I need the person who did the 2/3 part really well to come out and finish the last third and carry this through to the last mile.
Yeah. And Mike is right on that. It's all the same when you're solving a problem. And in the game plan that Mike has come up with, it's really important to describe your problem or the end solution, what you're going for, in the right way. Because if I describe my fence where it's beautiful cedar and the nails are perfectly lined up and whatnot, all right. So If I know that's part of what I'm going for, then I don't need to be doing any of it. But if the fence just needs to be up and look good and the nails don't need to be perfectly lined up, okay, I can accomplish that. So being able to and Mike said, have enough money to go on a family vacation as one of your problems. But if that's all you say, you may not get there, because is your family vacation to Paris for 2 weeks, or is it to Cleveland for a weekend? There's a big difference in how you solve those two problems.
And we've got to be as specific as we can with any of this. So the Paris vacation, if you live just outside of Paris, might be less expensive than going to Cleveland if you live outside of Paris. If you live in Cleveland, it might be less expensive to vacation in Cleveland than it is to go out to Paris. So the context matters. And as you go through it, the mistake that a lot of people make is being very specific about what this thing is that you want to solve. And then beyond that, why do you want to solve it? So I want a fence. I want to have a border that's going to keep the dog in place, or I want a vacation budget to support this thing that I want to do with family. Why do I want to keep the dog in place? Well, I want to give the dog a chance to just run around the backyard on days when we don't have time to go for a walk. I want him to have the freedom. Okay, so what does the fence need to do? The fence needs to secure that perimeter, keep the dog in, be tall enough that the dog's not going to be able to jump over it, probably be sunken in deep enough so the dog's not going to dig through it, all of these things. Vacation fund, if the vacation is going to cost me $5,000 to have a really good vacation, I should probably plan on accumulating or solving for $7,000 so that I can go over budget. Now that's 40% over budget. But imagine if you plan for 40% over budget, come through under that plan and still exceed your budget availability. How much more enjoyable, how much more interesting, how much more exciting is that vacation going to be? Rather than planning, making that mistake and saying, hey, I just need $5,000. I'm going to go ahead and plan for the $5,000 and then coming in short and then trying to figure out, okay, what do I have to cut out to do it? Because there's always going to be a little bit of overrun. There's always going to be something else that comes up. There's always going to be something that gets in the way. How can I mitigate my risk by thinking a bit about what some of those challenges are? You run into the same thing when you're building out your annual number from a sales perspective. If we want to generate $7.5 million this year, or by the end of the next fiscal year, let's build our plan to support generating 9, work backwards from 9, give ourselves the cushion to be able to come in short of what we were shooting for, but ultimately execute or exceed our plan number.
You said something I think is also important to the discussion that made me realize a fence really was not the problem I was solving. I need a fence was not the problem I was solving. I want my dog to stay in my yard was the problem I was solving. And a fence was the part of that solution. So that's probably important too, to realize what problem are you really trying to solve?
And why is it important? Because things are going to get tough. You're going to get to the point. We're moving up to the point where everybody's going to be doing your New Year's resolutions. Everybody does this every year. And what's going to be awesome is people are going to talk about it as this reset, because 2021 is going to be so much better than 2020. We rebranded the reset to the game plan because I wanted to get away from the word reset, because there's going to be a lot of noise associated with resetting things. Don't think of it as a major reset. Don't think of it as something that is much bigger than it is. Just limit it down to the things that you can achieve and that you can execute against. And then also be really clear about why that thing's important. Why? Because you want your dog to be happy. You want your dog to be excited, enjoy going outside, have the freedom to run around and not feel like he's on a leash or that there's risk that he might get into something outside of this border. Why do you want to go on vacation? Because you want to be together with your family. You want to enjoy that time. And then when you have to start making some decisions where you're trading short-term benefit versus long-term reward, you can make the effective decision focused on the long-term, the thing that's out there, that's beyond your reach, that you're actually moving toward. The goals at some point, as you get better at this, goals are going to be big. They're going to be grand. They're going to be really exciting things. But in order to execute on the really exciting things, you got to do the early things really well early on. So the goal might be, hey, I just want to wake up every morning and the first thing I want to do is have a drink of water. And I had a conversation with Jeff Knoll. We talked about this on an episode that we recorded recently, where he says he pre-plans his day. He's got his thing of water in his office puts it there the night before so that when he wakes up in the morning, he doesn't have to think about going down to the kitchen to get the water going. You can do these same things. It's not that Jeff's got a superpower or Jody's got a superpower or I've got a superpower. You can do these things. Just think about them and then start executing. And before you know it, you'll start to say, hey, these are the things I should be doing. And these are the things that really aren't providing a lot of value. Start cutting out the things that aren't providing value. Focus more time and energy on the things that are, and things will start happening that you would have never expected. Positive things will start happening.
All right, Mike, I'm excited for one to get back out and start building that fence, because you've got me so excited about the problem I'm really solving by building that fence. You mentioned the game plan before. The course is worth signing up for, but even if you don't get the course, get Mike's game plan document. You still make that available, right? You can get the document without the course.
Absolutely. The game plan document's available. The traps document is available. If you go to /traps, catalystsale.com/traps, you'll see the 7 traps that people fall into when thinking about goal setting and execution. We've covered a number of those in this discussion. Maybe we put together a bingo card to see which traps we nailed. And I think we hit on most of them as we're going through.
All right. Remind us again, Mike, where we can get the document.
catalystsale.com/traps for the traps document, and catalystsale.com/game plan for the game plan.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike. And thank you for listening to the Catalyst Sale Podcast.